Far From Home this week, so this is going to be my early, non-spoilery reaction and review. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the Marvel videos. It's going to be crazy this summer. There's a new round of that IMAX ticket giveaway too. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a Spider-Man comment on the video. Yes, I will address the new cut of Avengers Endgame at the end of this video too, because there was a whole bunch of announcements in the last couple of days. All really good stuff for Marvel fans. Kevin Feige was even talking about how Sony was planning on crossing Venom over with Spider-Man and how that would work. But just to start with, Spider-Man Far From Home has this impossible task as a movie being sandwiched right between Marvel Phase 4 and Avengers Endgame, probably one of the best last movies in a big saga of films that anyone has ever done. It's going to be really hard for any other movies this summer to do good against Avengers Endgame. There's still a couple big ones coming later this summer, but just in terms of what it did with the characters, Avengers Endgame was such a final movie for a lot of big stories that it's sort of like Avengers Infinity War and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp is just like a really small movie happening sandwiched between two big Avengers movies. So unless you're a really big hardcore Marvel fan, a lot of people just wound up ignoring that movie. So a lot of people were worried about Spider-Man Far From Home happening so close to Avengers Endgame. But the crazy thing is they totally nailed it. It's so much better than Spider-Man Homecoming, but the way Kevin Feige and the Sony people wound up winning was not in going bigger necessarily, it was actually in going smaller in terms of story. It's a very simple story. It's all about Spider-Man being torn between what he knows he has to do and what he wants to do. Very classic Spider-Man story. That's what the Spider-Man character is all about, going back to the classic comics. He's a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He wants to have regular relationships with his friends or his love interests, depending on which of his love interests you stan. But all the while, within the context of the MCU, you have Nick Fury saying it's time to step up. The world needs a new Iron Man. Is that going to be you? Even the cops on the street, as you've seen in the trailers, are asking him, are you going to be the new Iron Man?
You gonna be the next Iron Man now?
Well, no, I don't have time. I'm too busy doing your jobs.
What? I'm kidding. Look, keep up the good work.
Because I am going on vacation.
And for a lot of the movie, he just keeps deflecting the question, refusing the hero's call. I don't have time to do that when I'm so busy doing your guys' jobs. It's been a lot of fun watching Spider-Man grow up in the MCU. Tom Holland also growing up before our eyes. I think he was still 18 or 19 when they cast him as Spider-Man before Captain America Civil War, and now he's about 23 years old, so he's literally growing up before our eyes. But they've also been using the Spider-Man character to broaden the MCU mythology over these last couple of films and give you this perspective that we've never got before. What does a regular kid growing up in the MCU think about all these big Avengers events and all these battles that they fight? Then eventually he gets the spider bite, he becomes Spider-Man, and he becomes part of the action himself. There was even a trailer yesterday where he names Mysterio an Avenger. Welcome to the Avengers, because I guess he's the only one on planet Earth right now that's available. But because he's been such a fanboy, obviously, spoilers for Avengers Endgame if you haven't seen it yet, because we have to talk about the end of that movie. He's there on the battlefield. They have the reverse Infinity War moment where Iron Man was cradling him while he turned to dust. Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. I don't want to go. They flip that on its head, so he's left with all this PTSD and trauma. And one of the big complaints about a lot of the Marvel, especially comic book films, is that they don't always deal with the consequences of some of these really big actions. So like, how do they carry this moment forward? How does everybody feel about the end of Avengers Endgame? What's going on in everyone's heads? Because it's 2023. All these kids from Spider-Man Far From Home are coming back from the dust. There were so many questions about how they're going to address that. How are all his classmates the same age? Don't worry, no spoilers, but they do address that during the movie. There are a lot of theories after Avengers Endgame came out how that would work. They have a relatively simple way of answering that. But the script also does a really good job of honoring the trauma that Spider-Man is going through. Part of the reason why he wants to go on this class trip and not be Spider-Man for the summer. Like, I just want to have a break from all this stuff I've been dealing with. But like I said, the movie is all about Spider-Man being torn between what he wants to do and what he needs to do, what the world demands of him, and Nick Fury representing the world. Time for you to step up. Whatever you thought about Tom Holland's performance during Spider-Man Homecoming, I feel like he's matured a lot as an actor the last couple of years, so he did a really good job with the dramatic moments. There are a couple minor complaints that people will probably have about some of the jokes that don't quite land. There is a lot of comedy, there is a lot of that teenage romance subplot, so if you were not a fan of that during Spider-Man Homecoming, they do have more of that during this because they're trying to develop the Spider-Man MJ relationship, as you've seen in all the trailers.
The costume looks great for the costume party.
She knows. I told her.
I figured it out.
To their credit, they do try to provide a new spin on the Spider-Man MJ relationship. As you've seen through Zendaya's performance, she's just a little bit more clever. She's the one that figures out that he's Spider-Man in all the trailers. Speaking of which, you've probably seen in the last couple of trailers, there've been a lot of scenes of Spider-Man swinging around New York City with Zendaya's MJ, and I feel like one thing that they have done way better with the recent Spider-Man films is nail the physics of Spider-Man, this sort of balletic movement through the air that's really hard to do unless you have amazing special effects or just really banger practical effects. Really easy way to think about that is like the big final battle from Avengers Endgame or the de-aging technology. How good has that gotten in the last couple of Marvel movies? It's almost getting flawless. You almost can't tell the difference. They could probably even do an entire film with an 80s version of the Avengers just de-aging these older MCU heroes to their younger selves. As is with all the previous Spider-Man stuff we've seen in the MCU, he's very tied to the Iron Man character as he's dealing with all this trauma of losing him. The movie does a really good job of adding a lot of complexity to the legacy of Iron Man in the MCU. So in a broader sense, the world is wondering who's going to be the next Tony Stark Iron Man person, the person to wrap the world in a suit of armor, to be this great protector and sacrifice himself for everyone. Spider-Man thinks that it's going to be this new Mysterio person that's just shown up. Wow, he seems like he knows what he's doing. Maybe I can still be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But also think about the negative way that they've treated the legacy of Iron Man in the MCU. Like Avengers Age of Ultron is a good way, where you have Scarlet Witch and Vision who grow up hating Tony Stark because their home was destroyed, their parents were killed with weapons from Stark Industries, the more complicated side of Tony Stark's legacy in the MCU. So even though they're not really explicit about it, a lot of those questions are raised during these trailers that you guys have been watching. They deal with that in a really cool way during the movie. Jake Gyllenhaal was amazing as Mysterio. If you remember the story about Kevin Feige talking to Keanu Reeves for every single Marvel movie, because Keanu Reeves is blowing up right now, you're all breathtaking. Kevin Feige recently said when people asked him about Keanu Reeves, oh, we talked to him about coming into every single Marvel movie. We're just waiting for the right role for him. They're still talking to him about the Eternals right now. He said the same thing about Jake Gyllenhaal. We've been talking to Jake Gyllenhaal about being in a Marvel movie ever since we started making Marvel movies at Marvel Studios. The reason why it's taken this long to get him into the MCU is because they just haven't found a role till they got to Mysterio. Just the perfect role for the kind of complex characters that Jake Gyllenhaal has been playing the last several years.
Viewer discretion is advised. Here's what we know.
They're also bringing it full circle by putting him in a Spider-Man film too. If you remember, way back during the Tobey Maguire era, during Spider-Man 2, when they were getting ready to start making that, Tobey Maguire was almost replaced with Jake Gyllenhaal as the Peter Parker character. You'd think that Mysterio would be ridiculous in an MCU movie, but they totally make it work. They totally made the fishbowl, everything about the character work. He also layers his scenes as Mysterio in really cool, complex ways that'll stand out when you go see the movie more than once. So it's just fun to watch Mysterio in the MCU the first time, but the second time you'll notice way more stuff going on in scenes than you may have noticed the first time because you're not really thinking about the big twists of the character. The only real issues that I had with the movie is that there are a couple of jokes that wind up landing really flat that they lean on pretty hard, and if you're not a fan of the teenage romance subplot with the Peter Parker character in the MCU, they do lean on that pretty hard during this movie. Sam Jackson is awesome as always as Nick Fury. It shouldn't even be a question at this point. Bitch, you've been to space. He's the one that's giving Spider-Man the call to action, telling him to grow up, time to be responsible now. The movie itself also does a lot of world building for Marvel Phase 4, so not only is it a really cool take on a Spider-Man story and the character, it's also important for the future of the MCU. That being said, there are 2 post-credit scenes. They are important and they will blow your mind, so no spoilers, but be sure to stay through the end of the credits. Obviously, we'll be talking about a lot of stuff when the movie comes out. I'm not ready to call it my favorite Spider-Man movie so far, but it is up there with Spider-Man 2 from Tobey Maguire era. I will do a full ranking of Spider-Man films once I have a chance to see it again. We're not really allowed to post our full reviews till the end of the month, so don't worry, I will do a full review when we get closer to the movie actually coming out. Leave all your Spider-Man video requests in the comments below. I'll probably do a separate video about what Kevin Feige said about future Venom crossover because it also has ramifications for the future of Spider-Man in the MCU. It's all good news, so don't worry about that. And yes, I will do a separate video about the extended cut of Avengers Endgame that they're releasing in theaters next weekend. That's right, releasing Endgame in theaters again with extra footage to get everyone to come see it so that they can beat Avatar's box office. I see what you're doing there, Kevin Feige. But congratulations to the giveaway winner from my last big Marvel video, Aliens Art. Please email me on the About page of my channel so I can get your details. Click here for that brand new Spider-Man Far From Home extended trailer with a couple extra big scenes, including that big Avengers moment. And click here for that brand new Avengers Endgame deleted scene with Iron Man and Doctor Strange. Thank you so much.